Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 14th of July. 14th of July. Isn't that Bastille Day or something? The fifth day, unless I've miscounted, of our trip. Days 6 and 7 still to come. So we got up this morning. Again, there was nothing to film really. Nothing happened. Out of the hammock at 5:30, started walking about 6:30, 20 minutes of 7. And we are now at the west side of South Pond. And I will show you the pond. So we've come about 2.7 miles. It's now about 8 o'clock, so doing pretty well on time. So here is South Pond. Now, since we're on the west bank, we are unfortunately going to be looking east into the sun. So I apologize, but there's not much I can do. So it's a nice little pond. It's way over there on the far bank. I can just make out a red canoe, but nothing else to go with it. So the trail doesn't actually come down here to the shore, but there's a very obvious, though unmarked, short side trail that does. Although why it's such an obvious trail, I'm not sure. There certainly isn't a place to set up a tent down here. There are a couple of trees appropriately spaced for a hammock. I should say a word about that, because last night we did have a late arrival in camp, and it was a fellow with a Hennessy hammock. And he set up on 2 trees that were much too close for me to consider using. So every time I say something's right for a hammock, I mean it's right for a hammock like mine. So, you want 5-6 paces or so. But if you got a Hennessy, then you can do something, a little shorter. I don't remember. I have a Hennessy, but I haven't set it up in many, many years. Anyway, that's about all there is to report here. I'm going to wash a pair of socks, and I guess I'll be on my way on to Route 4. After leaving Little Swift River Pond campsite this morning, we continued north on the AT with little elevation change and came to South Pond. From here we'll continue down to Route 4, and then a gradual ascent up to Piazza Rock lean-to. The climb will get steeper past Ethel Pond and Eddy Pond, and will eventually reach Saddleback Mtn. A little descent and then back up, crossing the Horn, and then down to Reddington Stream campsite. Here's the profile map for today: South Pond, Route 4, Piazza Rock, Ethel and Eddy Ponds, Saddleback Summit, the Horn, and then the campsite. Well, it is about 5 after 9, and we have reached Route 4, finally. And a busy road it is. So, well, I thought you'd want to see it, but I'm not going to stand here in the sun and talk too long. I'll go in a bit and hope to find a place to sit down and let you know where we're going, which is mostly up. Well, I guess there's no need for me to pull out my trail guide and memorize a lot of numbers. So, ahead of us is Piazza Rock lean-to at 1.8 miles, and then Saddleback Mtn. There's a few waypoints in between, but that's the big boy for today. That's about a 2,500 foot elevation gain from here. Then we go down a bit and back up over the Horn at 7.3, and then something that's not on here is Reddington Stream camping area, which is somewhere beyond the Horn. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to fill in the details on those mileages a little later. Alright, so there's a sign here that says you shouldn't start the ascent after noon. Well, it's only a little after 9, so we're good there. Well, here we are crossing the Sandy River. A short distance from Route 4. It's an interesting river crossing. I'm surprised I don't remember it at all. So we are on Piazza Rock, I'm pretty sure. So we made a 1/10 of a mile detour from the trail, straight uphill. And then had to climb kind of a rock chimney after going through a little rock cave, which was a little tricky with wearing a backpack and carrying hiking poles. And I have to say, on the whole, not really worth it. But couldn't come all this far without checking it out. So we're going to sit here for a while. We're going to drink some water, kind of camel up, because we'll be filtering some more water before we leave here. And rest for a while, although the hike from Route 4 up to here was not very strenuous. It was just, for the most part, a nice, gentle incline that I could just walk along without even breathing very hard. I felt like a thru hiker. I'm not. And that's all the report. I'd show you the view, but there really is no view. There is kind of a nice breeze, though. So Piazza Rock, lean-to, shelter, whichever, area is interesting. My first clue was when I got there, there was a big message board that was much bigger than anything you see at most shelters. And a map, can be handy. Lots of signs about leave no trace and this and that. Rules and regulations. And that was before you got actually to the campsite. It's actually near the side trail to the caretaker site. And what I found when I got to the tent site is that, being a very nice area and being only 1.8 miles off the road and the trail being fairly easy, it's really popular with people who hike in for the day. Maybe some of them go on to the summit of Saddleback, maybe they don't, I don't know. But it's full of people. It's like being at a campground. So there were a lot of tents already set up. It's 11 in the morning. There were 2 set up in the shelter, which is, and there's a part of the sign on the bulletin board says no tents in the shelter, but obviously people don't pay attention, which is, I'm sure, why there's a caretaker. Maybe babysitter would be a better term. So, you know, it's not unpleasant, but it's going to be mostly occupied by non-hikers, I'm going to guess, by the end of the day. So, and it's not a weekend thing. Today's Tuesday. Anyway, between going up to Piazza Rock and using the privy and filtering water, we spent about an hour there. So as I said, it's about 10 minutes after 11 now. And we've got 9/10 of a mile to Ethel Pond. I don't know how far to the summit, but we've still got 2,000 feet of elevation to gain. We didn't do all that much getting here. So we best get on with it. It's 20 minutes of 12, and we are apparently at Ethel Pond. I didn't expect to be here quite this soon. I'm guessing it's more likely that their mileages are off than I'm a super hiker. Well, it's nice to have a landmark. It's 2 miles from here to tree line. And the guidebook says, well, here's a brook and there's a brook and whatnot, but not a lot of real good waypoints between here and there. And we still have quite a bit of elevation to gain. Although you wouldn't know it by looking here. It looks like we're at the top of something. Well, it's 20 after 1, and I'm going to say we're at tree line. The warning signs about fragile alpine vegetation were just a few hundred feet below me, and no arguing with the fact that we can see stuff from here, so close enough for my book. So while I'm resting, we can take a look. Can't tell you what much of anything is. Down there is the pond. I did a little panorama of, hopefully that came out. Eddy Pond is the name of it. Yeah, you can see some lake that's just peeking over the top of that. And a lot of trees. And I'm going to guess that's Lake Moose-Look-Maguntic again. It looks like it. I don't know. Way over there, we're seeing something that's more in the Rangeley area. I think it's that way. Anyway, we're not at the top yet. Still quite a bit to do. Although the steepness does decrease substantially. Well, sorry I couldn't talk up there at the summit. Well, I could have, but it probably wouldn't have done any good. I think there was way too much wind. We arrived there just a little after 2 and took in the view. I expected, more people up there, but not. And so I also didn't meet any day hikers coming down. So none of the people coming into Piazza Rock shelter apparently are using it as a staging ground for coming up here. It did meet, several long distance hikers coming down. So now we have 1.7 back from the summit, not that far, to the Horn, which is that. And doesn't look 1.7 miles to me, but that's what the sign said. And we have to go there no matter how far it is. So over that and then down to the campsite. I guess the only possible explanation is this is not the Horn. There we go. That's the home. Makes much more sense. Well, it's now about 25 after 3, and we are leaving the fragile alpine zone. We got to the summit of the Horn right a little after 3, 5 after or so, and it was not only windy but quite foggy as well. We seem to be just below the ceiling here, a little lower. So it's not too far on to Reddington Stream Campground, which we'll be very happy to find for the evening. So we arrived at Reddington Stream campsite at about 4, and glad to have found it. And well, what we found is a fairly new area. It's still got a lot of rough edges to it, but I'm glad it's here, and we did find a spot to put up the hammock without any problem. So we did that. The water source is a 1,200-foot slog, but it looks like a nice water source, and so there was no problem getting water out of it. And once we'd done that, we went out and set up the hammock and tarp, and as soon as we had done that, it started to rain. Just a little pitter-patter off and on. Don't know if it'll develop into more. Kim has been not very communicative today, but today is the day she's driving from Connecticut up to Maine, up to Rangeley. She's going to spend a little time, having some R&R of her own before she picks me up in 2 days. So hopefully we'll get an updated weather forecast before too long. In the meantime, I think it's time for our daily bath. Well, it's now about 5 after 7, and we've done everything we're going to do except read it and sleep. So I guess I got to this campsite just in time. Again, when I got here, actually 2 guys were leaving. They had decided to go on to Poplar Ridge, and it seemed then the campsite was empty, but there was one gentleman I found at the water source, so there seemed to be the 2 of us. And, it was 4:15 or something at this point. And, well, then people just started showing up all over the place. And among them is a group of, it appears, French-Canadian boys. As opposed to the girls, I couldn't really figure out if there was chaperones or counselors or whatnot. With this group, it's easy to tell that there's a couple of people in charge, and then I'm not sure how many actual young lads there are. This campsite is pretty spread out. It's also very new. I'm not sure when it opened, but it's pretty raw in some respects. But anyway, so it's too spread out to see the full range. There's the map out of the trail showed a lot of campsites. Right where I am, there are 4, 2 platforms and 2 pads. I'm on one of the pads. The gentleman I met first is on another pad and platform. I'm sorry, and the other pad and platform are being used by 6 or 7 of the kids, and there's more of them, so apparently it's a full house. Anyway, that's the report for tonight. Had beef stroganoff, always excellent. And weather report from Kim is that we're going to get some intermittent showers, and then clear for tomorrow and a little cooler. Good news on both counts. So, that'll do it for today. Good night.